questions. Say you don't know nothing and you ain't seen a thing. Ave Maria, pray. Ave Maria, pray. Say the blood is on my hands, 'cause I put down the money and I made up a plan. Blue eyes, white lies, straight teeth and a crooked soul. Let the red blood of the green to narrow flow. Americano. Maria, these things I do, every night they cut me in two. It's in my blood to live for the kill. God only knows that I wanna stay to love you. Full moon is on the rise, patron saint of love and lies. The payoffs and the alibis, the shotgun shells and four-wheel drive. Ave Maria, pray. Ave Maria, pray. Gonna find me guilty as a trigger man, 'cause I put down the money and I made up the plan. Blue eyes, white lies, straight teeth and a crooked soul. Let the red blood and the green to narrow flow. Americano. I can burn like a wildfire, disappear like a ghost. Dagger in my cloak, I'm a rich and gracious host. Don't fear my ill repute, sweetest fruit is stolen fruit. If you're feeling dirty, cruel and mean, let a little more money make your conscience clean. Ave Maria, pray. Ave Maria, pray. Say the blood is on my hands, 'cause I put down the money and I made up the plan. Blue eyes, white lies, straight teeth and a crooked soul. Let the red blood and the green to narrow flow. Blue eyes, white lies, straight teeth and a ravenous soul. Let the red blood and the green to narrow flow.
Come on, somebody had to do it. Yo, VIP.
Let's kick it! Now,
Yo, VIP, let's kick it.
I stop, collaborate and listen. I suspect my brand new conditions. Grab the hold of me tightly, flow like a heart from daily and nightly. Will never stop? I don't know. Turn off the lights and I go to the extreme. I rock a mic like a vandal. Light up the stage and watch the Trump like a candle. Shoot the feel in your brain like a poison smoke. When I play a dope melody, anything less than the best is a melody. Believe it, you better stay away. Better hit bulls on the beat, don't play. If you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out the room on DJ the Ball.
Show me some moves, son.
Now that the party is jumping, got the bass kicked in, it's the biggest I'm pumping. To the point, no faking. Cooking MCs like a pound of bacon. Keep it up, I'm quick and nimble. I go crazy when I hear a cymbal and a hi-hat with a souped up tempo. I'm on a roll, it's time to go solo. My 5.0, right top down to my hair kick blow. It goes off standby, waving just to say hi. Excuse me, shot, I just roll by, can't go. Pursuing to the next stop. I was the last stop. The block is dead, yo, so I continue to A1A. She's right over you, girl, for the hot man, less than bikini. I'm in love with grabbing the bikini. Cause I about getting line. Shade with the gauge and vanilla with the 9. Ready for the jumps on the wall. Jumps acting up because I'm full of 8 ball. Gunshots, rings out like a bell. I grabbed a 9, all I heard was shells. Rolling on the concrete real fast. You thought, turn on the gas. Bubble to bubble, the alley was black. Trying to get away from the checkers. Check, police on the street, you know what I mean? They passed me up, they run it off the gun.
Yo, I'm gonna check out
All right, okay. I was looking for the absolute best way to start this, and I was like, oh, I have a bunch of pictures, and I have this, and I have that, and something fell into my lap, like literally 5 minutes before this happened, and my engineer at Scope said, hey, somebody just gave me this. I forget who, but it was Mike doing Ice Ice Baby. And I was like, you know what? That's literally Mike saying, here you go, man, just use it. Welcome everybody. Listen, there's no good way to kick something like this off. There's a time to be somber and there's a time to more, we're all in that right now. However, there's a lot of time for that. And I was like, well, I need to do something. I got to do something. I want his friends to be here. I want as many people as can be here, jump on the Zoom, right? Mike, I got to know Mike. First of all, hi, my name's Danny, Rando, whatever. And this is a celebration of, I'm not doing it yet. I won't do it yet. Of my friend and my boss. He was just everything to everybody, Mike Murray, who we lost last week. And I figured, over the pandemic, Mike and I, we streamed a lot with each other. We did a lot about how to find a job in InfoSec during a pandemic, how to interview, and how to do all of these things. And I was like, there's not everybody will be able to make a funeral. Not everybody will be able to sit with each other. A lot of us come to DEF CON every year, but that's not for another few months. So I figured, why not now have some of his friends come on and tell stories about Mike, right? Because that's what I think he'd want people just to be around each other, and at least we can get it out in the open. I know it's been absolutely critical for me to be out talking to people, texting, and things like that. So, Mike, I have no good way to really kick this off. Mike, I have no good way to. Wow, what the hell just happened there? I heard myself, and that was horrifying. For as much as somebody who like me who likes to listen to themselves, that was horrifying. So anyway, on the Zoom, I have a bunch of Mike's friends, and people will come in and out as they want to, and obviously you're all welcome to be in the chat and talk about Mike and things like that. He was my friend for about 5 years, and the first person I'm going to go to actually I remember her. This is one of the first times I ever became aware of Kathleen, who is just a wonderful person. I was working at Bank of America at the time, and the only good thing to come out of that was I got to work a table at B-Sides Las Vegas. And they're like, hey, can you sit there or whatever? And I was sitting there begrudgingly, whatever. And then I hear Kathleen on the phone. I remember distinctly. Like, it's very hard to forget Kathleen. And she was introducing this man with beautiful hair, by the way. He had this gorgeous curly hair, this man. And funny thing, every time I introduced him to somebody over email, I mentioned some metaphor about his hair, which was always a fun thing for me because it embarrassed the crap out of him. And Mike came up on stage to talk at B-Sides Las Vegas Higher Ground. And I was an instant fan, like right away. And I messaged him right after. I was pretty much still nobody then, like nobody, I didn't have really friends or whatever. And he was so gracious, and he's like, hey, give me a call and we'll talk. And 5 years later, you know, here we are. So, Kathleen, would you like to kick us off with like a story about Mike or anything you wanted to say about Mike?
Happy to. And I do remember you being at the B of A table, even though you didn't remember me the next time you saw me at B-Sides Augusta, but we'll talk about that the next time we see each other. You never left a conversation or an interaction with Mike without feeling immediately better. He heard you, he listened to you, and you walked away knowing that someone really spectacular noticed you and was able to really hear not only what you were saying, but what was in your heart. And that actually came through on Twitter. Many of us meet over Twitter, and I met Mike over Twitter. He was saying something about leadership and employee engagement. And I knew that that voice needed to be part of Higher Ground. So I reached out, and we didn't know each other. And he came and brought all of his wonderfulness, completely outside of security, but all of what he felt for community and employees and managing teams to Higher Ground. And he was mobbed after the presentation. And I asked him if he would continue being the person that would do the kickoff the second day of Higher Ground, a time when people who were midway in their careers really needed to hear inspirational talks. And I remember Josh being there in a Higher Ground when Mike announced that he was founding Scope Security, and Josh was there cheering him on in the background. I'm really thrilled that we have all of the Higher Ground conversations and presentations. Jack is pulling those all together so that we can have them all in one place. And Mike also shared his healthcare security career thoughts, part of DEF CON last year. So we're collecting all of those, and those will be together. But Mike and I really got to know each other over wine. He loves red wine like I do. I know he and Lana, they both have core events. She has her white wine and he has his red wine. And so we've been doing wine chats for almost the last 3.5 years, talking as entrepreneurs, talking as people going through therapy. We were very open about what our challenges were and how to be able to share that. And it was really nice to have someone to be able to talk about that with. But he always heard me. And I always felt so much better after talking to him. So our next wine chat was supposed to be last Tuesday. And thank you, Danny, for having this, because not having the wine chat after my mom's memorial was really hard, because Mike really helped me the 2 weeks before my mom's memorial. Because he knew how much driving I was going to have to do in the San Francisco Bay Area. I had to drive 4.5 hours each day all around the San Francisco Bay Area, and he was able to lament to me about San Francisco time. We were all really very lucky to have him in our life. He just burnt at both ends, sparked inspiration, loved everyone he met with. And as I said in the beginning, you definitely knew that you were heard and you were loved when you met with Mike. Thanks, Danny.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mike, God, he was instant. And another reason why I wanted to do this is not just to remember our friend, not just to remember our he was for all intents and purposes, he was a husband, he was a fiance, he was a brother, he was all of these things. But he was also, to me, a personification of the kind of person that I want to grow up to be in this industry. Again, this is one of those things. It's like I won the lottery. Every single day I wake up in this win, lose, or draw, the stupid business that we're in, because of the people around it. And you learn to, bye Kathleen. And you learn to follow people after a while, right? You learn to, and I'm going to be juggling my Zoom settings here. So yes, if the video is screwed up, I know when I'm fixing it. It's you learn to follow people, and Mike was one of those dudes who I ended up following. He was one of those guys that I would go to, right, to be like, man, what is my next move? Where like I found myself absolutely at a loss of whatever I'm doing right now sucks, and I don't know who to talk to. And the last time that happened, I called him and I said, hey, Mike, you got a couple minutes? And he was like, yeah, put it on my calendar. I'll be right there. And we started talking, and he's like, whoa. He goes, can you tell me what you do again? And I was like, oh, I switched to evangelism and blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh shit, I need that. He goes, all right, well, listen, you're probably hired already, but I'm going to let you talk to my guys, go through the thing. And I was like, yeah, I didn't call you for that, Mike. And he was like, no, I know, but I need you. And I went through the whole interview process, and something happened. I couldn't join him for about 6 months at Scope. And every single week he made time. I didn't ask, he made time for that. And we talked every Tuesday at 5:00. He would either, as Kathleen had said, pour one of his ungodly amounts of bottles of wine that he had, or something like, or bourbon, something like that. And we would just chat about literally everything until he would see my wife come in the background of my camera, and then he knew it was time to let me go. Otherwise, we would have talked for hours and hours. But I say all that to say, that's the example that I want to set. I was already, God damn it, I was already learning so much from him. There must have been 50 different times this week where I caught myself saying, oh, I wonder about this thing. I better go ask Mike. And then, over and over again. So anyway, that's just the kind of guy he is. But I could tell stories, but I got a lot of other people on that want to tell stories. Mary Ellen, did I see you on here? Mary Ellen, are you lurking somewhere? Oh, I don't know what happened to her. Okay. Well then I'll leave it. I see Josh, I see Jennifer, I see, who is that in the corner? Oh, Bill, yes. Bill, it's been a week, bro. Bill,
I know, that's like light year.
Yeah, so listen, Bill is one of these people, all right, who I knew from Twitter, but I didn't know like how close him and Mike were. And I swear to God, he talked about you all of the time. I was like, oh, cool. So like, I'm going to get to work with Bill. He's like, no, not really. Cause you were already gone. You rat bastard. But you were one of those people who were always on Mike's mind. So if you have a story about him, anything you want to say about him, the floor is yours.
No, I do. And he, I'll say first and foremost, like everybody else is thinking, it's such a tremendous, heartbreaking loss to not have him around. I mean, you said it, Kathleen said it, and I know Jen and Josh will say it as well, and others. He was always there for everybody, right? And it was always about you when you were talking with him. It was never about him, right?
Yeah, I never, I was never able to put my finger on that, but God, that's right. Like, never once did I think his attention was elsewhere.
Yeah. Yep. I have funny stories. I have, horrific stories. I have, not horrific, just, they're all funny stories. Some are hysterical actually, but, we both enjoyed our drinks. Like you said, Mike would come on our, I swear half his week must have been happy hours with everybody he knew, because that's what I'm hearing from everybody else. I'd spend an hour and a half a week with him as well. And he would have either a big glass of wine or a big glass of bourbon or a Clase Azul tequila or something, right? But we go back 20 years, to the early 2000s. we worked together at Liberty for a while, and then he moved on from there. And then, I got a call out of the blue in, mid 2014, late 2014. Said, hey, you happy where you're at? I said, well, I'm very successful and doing quite well. Been here, 17 years. And he said, do you want to make a difference in healthcare? I said, yeah, well, that sounds intriguing. What do you got? And, 6 months later, I left a very stable long-term position to go with him to help build out the group at GE Healthcare, right? Making devices better for the world, right? And never look back. And I guess
he's the only person that would have ever that got me to do healthcare. I swore back when I knew nothing, right? I started in security 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago now. And I was a little IT rat. I didn't know anything. But I did know one thing. I would never touch healthcare. Let somebody else do it. It seems too broken. I'm not going to do this. Swore up and down up until Mike offered me this job. He hired me as his director of customer success. And I swore up and down I would do it. But Mike Murray flashes that smile at you, man. It's kind of hard to turn that down.
It is. It was impossible to turn down. And I did it at least twice, right? He lured me away from a long-term career at a financial services, Fortune 50 property and casualty insurance company to go work for a Fortune 10 medical device manufacturer, and then did it again with Scope. He said, he left GE and went on to look out in others, and then founded Scope, and then said, hey, do you want to make even more of a difference in healthcare? And it's like, this sounds like a very familiar conversation. What do you get? So yes, I left GE and went to work for Scope. Right? If it wasn't for the pandemic, I'd still be there. He's
one of those guys that had such, and it's infectious because it's him and I have had multiple conversations about the things that you do. So I put together, I'm trying to find as many talks of his as I can, because he believed, like I believe, that it's what you leave behind, right? I only ever stream, I only ever do YouTubes, all of this crap, because I hope it's useful down the line, which is Mike. That's why I followed Mike. And we had such plans about being able to start fights in the industry, and because we know how broken things are. And I said, oh, are you going to let me get up on stage and get in trouble? He's like, absolutely. Yeah. Not yet. We just got our Series A. Don't do it quite yet, but we'll get there.
Give it 6 months.
Yeah. Please give it 6 months until we get some more clients on. And by the way, I know it might seem weird to some people, not to anybody who knew Mike, right? And I'm going to assume a lot of the people, maybe we got like 30 people who are here. That's awesome to have a company name up top, right? It is impossible to separate Scope from Mike because they are one and the same. And that is the one thing that, like, Scope is Mike was Scope. So just you could see that from the people that he hired. Everybody I talked to, I was like, all right, twist my arm. Like, I'll absolutely come. Yeah. I don't know what else to say on that point.
There would have been a third time as well. And thinking back on it, back when he was helping, when he was running Mad Security way back, he tried to lure me away from Liberty back then as well. And things didn't quite work out the way that they did, so I didn't make that jump. But he finally hooked me a second time and got me away with GE. But so yeah, I'm a serial Murray follower, right? I mean, it's been the story of my career for the last 10 years or so. Actually, probably more than 20 at this point since I know him, since I met him.
One of the things I'm most thankful for, and actually, Jennifer, I'm going to go to you next, is that I will never have, even when him and I were like, I've been here for 3 months, and rest assured, we had arguments already. Of like, oh my God, Mike, why does this suck? And why do I feel like this? He was like, welcome to the show, pal. But I will never, even when we were arguing, he smiled He smiled the whole goddamn time, which was so infuriating to me because I was trying to make a point about why I thought this was shit and I don't understand this, and my ego was like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Why this seems fuck. He's like, all right, man. First of all, breathe. Second of all, here's why this is. And those fucking dimples of his. It was the whole time. What drew you to Mike, Jennifer?
So Mike and I met, I think in 2007, when I was helping to organize the security bloggers meetup stuff. We met via email, and I was a PR manager at an up and coming tech company nobody had heard of at the time called Fortinet. And he was very kind to me. And I was like, at this time, and still to this day, I had the worst imposter syndrome, especially in this industry, quite frankly, because I'm a marketer. I'm not a hacker. I'm not a tech person. I'm not a policy person. I'm passionate about security, and I've been doing it for a long time, but I always felt and still sometimes feel like an outsider. But we became friends because we somehow ended up, because Mike just has this way of just engaging you. I don't know if it's a social engineer in him that he uses for good. Josh is nodding yes. And we talked about this. He just engaged me and was like, what made you start doing this? And I'm like, because I want people to respect me, because I'm not a member of the security community. And it started where he was like, well, yes, you are. And we ultimately became friends, and our friendship has gone through a lot of iterations over the years and ups and downs. And to be perfectly candid, we were on a little bit of a downswing right before he passed. But, and I can't remember who just said it, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit emotional, but even when we were having these tough conversations, he'd always say, I love you. He always made sure that I knew I was loved. And I'm jumping around. This isn't easy for anyone. So I think a lot of us are going to be like James Joyce stream of consciousness here. But the thing that drew me to Mike was just his empathy. I've never met anyone who loved as deeply as he did. And I remember when Lana first posted to share from the family that he passed, how she put about, even if he met you for a moment, he loved you. And that is true. And that sounds so cheesy. It would sound so cheesy if you didn't know Mike. But it was true. And it is true. And I believe firmly that it's still true. And I don't want to steal too much airtime here, but
we got nothing but time. We got nothing but time. This is us. This is for us. It's you talk.
I can't tell you how many times he saved my life. And I'm not exaggerating. Like depression, really bad decisions in relationships, all kinds of things that if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be. And I'm so grateful to him. And I'm so grateful to the friends that I made through him. I'm even in a strange way, grateful to the people that I've gotten closer to since he passed. Because of course, it's just like him to keep bringing people together, right? And I'm especially grateful for Alana, who is one of my best friends. And if you didn't know her and get to know her, she's the best woman on the planet. And the minute you meet her and see her smile, you know exactly who Mike chose her to be his life partner. And I've been fortunate to spend words are so hard right now, even as a marketing person, but you know, I've been fortunate to spend some time with her and her family the last few days, and the love that's there, the empathy of his that shines through her to his friends and family. He'll always live on through her and through us if we really focus on that, which I know none of us will stop doing. And I'm going to stop now because I'm going to start sobbing and go off video for a second. But that's the best I got. And I just, you know, I know we all feel the same way in different ways, but he, you know, will I know many of us are going to dedicate our lives to honoring him, and we will never stop.
So thank you, Jennifer. So to your point, matter of fact, I am getting messages from Lana as we speak. By the way, I want everybody to know, and Lana wants you to know too, she's being taken care of. She is loved. She is surrounded. If you know her, even if you don't, if you have her socials or her number, it's not bad to contact her. She sends her love to everybody. She says thank you. But she messaged me, and this is another one of these things that, like, I could write entire talks on how to be a good leader just off of knowing Mike. But Lana sent me a message, and she said, it's important for people to know that Mike made time, and this is not even hyperbolic by any means, made time for every single person that needed it in his life. One week he had multiple 11, 12-hour days because he insisted on spending time with each person that wanted to do virtual drinks to talk about their life. He was exhausted, but he put everybody first. He loved and wanted to support everybody in his life, no matter what. It was infectious how he would do this, and he would do it so gently. And Jennifer, just like you said, we are all fucking unfortunately human, most of us. I don't know about Bill. I think he's half cyborg, but I think that we are all human in the fact that the sad fact is we may never get to have the final conversations that we want with people, but our relationships aren't built around a single conversation. Like I said, I yelled at Mike one day because I was so frustrated, and he just had fucking love in his voice and his eyes and his demeanor. He's like, I get it, man. He's like, just breathe. We're going to talk through this. And I was like, Mike, I am screaming at you right now, and I am frustrated as shit right now. It's only been 3 months. And he had that way. It is something that I had not learned about yet, how to remain legitimately calm under that and understanding. We can all talk about being empathetic, right? We can all talk about grace under pressure. We can all talk about these things in the abstract. Few of us are able to walk that walk. Mike was just it. Like, that was the thing. And you can know him for 20 years or 5 days, and you'd be like, I love that motherfucker. And yeah, and just because we don't have the final conversations that we wanted to, my final conversation was something about an email I needed to send him or some shit. Or I think I was yelling about something. Not at him this time. It was something else. But you didn't need to do that. He knew, unequivocally he knew, and he never held grudges against that kind of shit. And so even if your last conversation was not what you wanted it to be, his last conversation with you was what he wanted it to be, because he made you feel special. Josh, if somebody cornered you in an elevator at a conference or something like that and said, describe Mike Murray to me in 10 minutes, what's the first thing you would say about him, you think?
Have I ever been able to say something in less than 10 minutes?
No, that's why it's kind of funny that I asked you that.
I don't know, the word I kept coming to this, it's been a week or more than a week now, but I think it's been a week since a lot of the tears started flowing. But outsized. I just think people used a lot of the words I would have used, but I want people to really hear them like Mike would really hear you. In fact, I'm almost kicking myself that I didn't get to know Mike until I was emotionally broken. So perhaps now many of us are emotionally broken, we can be more receptive to some of the lessons and to emulate kind of how he was. But the first time I met him, I think it was Cisco Gate at Black Hat. It was a very confusing time. I worked at ISS and I met him, and I was instantly terrified because I could tell I had just met the most skilled social engineer in my entire life. But I also didn't know if it was unsafe, but I was a little intimidated because I could just see those eyes. They were just full of light and penetrating and could see into your soul. And I didn't know what to make of it. So I was impressed with him, and I thought he was an excellent communicator and a great presenter. But unfortunately, more than just, social friends at the sec blogger meetup or things like Jennifer for a long time. But when I lost my mom, I had a really tough year in 2013. It started losing my mom to brain cancer slowly and very painfully. And that's the year I kind of, and then shortly after lost my best friend, right when I was about to turn 50, and had to put down my dog 2 weeks later. It was a rough year. And I just felt like I was broken and I couldn't heal. And that's not even necessarily when I met Mike, but part of that healing process was, just like Jennifer and many have said, I had a lot of imposter syndrome in this community. We have some gatekeeping and some elder gods and some very aggressive behavior, and some people like it that way. So I didn't really dare much or try much. But in my grieving is when I started the I Am the Cavalry stuff, because I started to realize that the empathy, the vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was strength, and it was in allowing really deep, authentic human connection. And there was a weight to conversations, and you got to see someone on a real level versus a superficial one. And I tried not to let go of that. I like the empathy is like a muscle, and most of us just never built it. And once I started building it and putting my neck out there, it brought people to your life, and Mike was one of them. And it also brought some retaliation and hate. And that's when I got to see one of my favorite parts of Mike, which was encouragement. Like once he saw you and I felt seen, let me just say that. I don't think there's very many people I met in my entire life who can actually see me. And I've talked to so many of his friends and chosen family over this last week who said something similar, like Mike got me. And it's not just that he made you feel like he got you, the precision and nuance with which he would express what he saw in you. In fact, I think he saw more in me or others than they saw in themselves. And by being present when he spoke to you, and by being an empath like he was, and by listening and paying attention. And it's not just empathy, it's a huge fucking brain too. Like that guy's one smart, thoughtful systems thinker, long view thinker, like the whole package deal. He saw you, not just what you are now, but maybe what you would be, and was always trying to encourage and lift someone up and help them on to the next step of their self-actualization. So it's one thing to like be a good person or to be a friend. It's another to make everyone around you better. And that first year, the cavalry was really, really, really rough. Some of my friends turned out to not like what we were doing very much. So I lost a lot of friends. I also gained a lot of friends. And it's funny because at some point, Mike and I couldn't tell who was influencing whom, because in the part where he was encouraging me to stick it out and that we're possessed by a power bigger than the pain, that's when he chose to leave his job and go to GE. And that's when he chose to pull in Bill. And that's when he started saying, hey, if you guys are looking for a change of work, one of the things we always said is we're always going to do security. Why don't we do something that saves lives? And he didn't just say, yeah, and nod his head. He walked it. He did it. And he inspired other people to do it. And how many of your careers listening did he help you through your next choice or put you on your next path? Being Bill several times, right? So it was around 2013 that I started. That motherfucking hacker hacked his way into my heart. I don't have a brother, but I felt like he was my family really fast. And it's because he put in the work and the time, and he made time. And sometimes I was the one listening, and I think I got better at being an empath because he was mentoring me into it. But there's a story I was going to tell, maybe. I don't know. I'm jumping around, but there was another key moment. Well, yeah.
I said, tell it.
I'm not rushing.
I don't know.
I'm running this thing, Josh. I'm not going anywhere, man. So you tell your story.
Well, so it's so funny to hear this web of inspiration he's done, right? I mean, two of you mentioned Scope, but like this woman, I'm going to try to read her little email, but this woman, Jackie Monson, is a leader in Sutter Health. And she served on a congressional task force with me for healthcare. And it was rough. It was really rough. And we had a bunch of creative ideas. And Mike must have heard me say these two things that like healthcare really needs and that no one's doing it. Like, I just wish someone in the private sector would do this, because if they did this, all these small and medium and rural hospitals might actually have a fighting chance. And there was one time in San Francisco where we had dinner. I introduced him to Jackie. Seth Rosenblatt interviewed us on stage at this little event. And I'm not kidding. Mike had heard it maybe 6-7 times, but there was the time I said it right then, I was making perfect eye contact with him. And I saw that light go off, and he didn't use a single word, but he's basically said, I'm going to go do it. And Jackie and I cornered him. And the next thing you knew, we talked about it further at RSA, and he decided to leave Lookout and start something and hire all of you and try to help all those people. And yeah, I didn't get permission in advance, but she wrote a really beautiful note to her team. And maybe I'll share it once I get some permission. But one thing I should punctuate in her note is that he was such an incredible ally and advocate for women in cybersecurity, for which it's a really tough thing to get into, especially succeed in some of those senior leadership ranks. And he was always very encouraging and advocating for her and pointing out her successes and helping members of her team. And Bill and Audie and a couple of us, you know, we ran the Cyber Med Summit in San Diego one year, and one of his female employees and advisors was being treated like trash by a medical guy participating. And, you know, it was a tough situation, but Mike and Bill and Steve Christie-Coley and Audie, like we swarmed and we both handled that situation, but we also tried to turn it into a teaching moment for everybody else. But I don't know if many people saw that in Mike, but he wasn't just a mentor. He was also trying to make sure that we brought together and elevated the best of us and the most diverse sets of talents and experiences. And I really think that that's why one of the reasons that his absence hurts so much is that there's almost like a battle for the soul of this profession or this community. You know, do we want to hoard the coconuts and gatekeep and say, this is mine, or I'm the first and I'm the best? Or do we want to encourage and attract and elevate and assist? And if Mike's missing and his outsized empathy and his outsized mentorship and his outsized encouragement and his outsized love and his outsized presence and his outsized vision and his outsized walking the talk, that's why he's left such an outsized hole in us. That's why this one hurts so much more.
There's a lot of really great stories. Josh, I'll give you time to pause for a second, so you can catch yourself up. It's rough, right? Like, the only reason why I am not abjectly on the fucking floor right now is because I am in podcast or streaming mode. If I get me in a bar somewhere, you're gonna have to hold me up. That's the only reason right now. But there's a lot of stories in chat. Fallon in chat says, you know, Mike was a living legend. He didn't just see people, he saw, God, this is so true, their potential selves. God knows what he saw in me to give me my first like director level position of like, so he so many times I would go to him and be like, hey Mike, I'm thinking about doing this. He was like, yeah, I hired you to go do that shit, so go do it. What are you asking me for? And I was like, all right, man, I'll go do it. Fuzzy Logic, in June 2012, while I was recovering from my tracheotomy in the ICU, I saw a job ad for a CTF environment tester on Craigslist at Mad Security. After a couple emails back and forth, Mike asked to set up an interview. I told him my current situation, and he was amazingly understanding and allowed me to do a chat interview with him. Like, talk about rolling with the punches. Like, oh, your throat's all fucked up? All right, cool, we'll do a chat. Mike was the kind of guy that would have did it over, smoke signals. And then Fallon says, I remember when he got to Megan before me and snatched her up, I wasn't even mad because I knew she went to the absolute best employer. Let's see, Casey. Oh, hey Casey, what's up, man? He was 1,000,000% a quiet champion for the true spirit of the cybers. Jesus Christ, man. You had to throw in cybers. He was. And we've talked about it a lot before, but I remember I used to think that I was a good listener. People would come like, oh, he's such a good listener and he's my friend, blah, blah, blah. And then I studied a bunch of the social engineering shit in the wrong place, but I learned a lot about the active listening thing. And you can learn that and it'll open up your eyes, but you never realized, even after the fact, until you're actually talking about it with other people, how easy that came to Mike. And Bill had said earlier, I think we've all said at one point, you were his entire world when you were talking to him. And I want to be that for other people, right? Like, it's really hard at conferences and shit like that, but I don't want it to be hard, right? I want somebody. God, I feel bad. I met Bill at Shmoo this year, and we talked standing up in a fucking hallway. I was a little drunk. But if I was anything like Mike, I would have pulled him aside to a quiet table and given him my full attention. Like, I wasn't channeling my inner Murray at that point. But there was so much other stuff that we could very much so. So yeah, but yeah, Josh, you got more stuff, I bet.
Well, I don't know how to tell this story, but I'm going to try. And I think it's important because I don't think it's not just encouraging people. Mike played some pretty key moments, really, really key moments that could have gone left or right. And I don't know if the story will portray it, but I'm going to try just because I want him to get some of the credit he deserves for this. One of the key highlights of my life. I mean, I was telling my daughters once and they just started to weep when I told them what happened. But when we started the cavalry, we initially focused on cars. We wanted to get to medical because it was much bigger and harder. There's only like 20 car companies, but there's 10,000 medical device makers. And we had heard from Billy Rios and Jay Radcliffe and even Barnaby before he passed, like how hard it is to work with the FDA. And they were angry and they would point fingers and there was good reasons to be angry. I mean, there was a huge divide between us. And I had built some trust with Suzanne Schwartz at FDA, and we were trying to get somewhere. And Steve Christie-Coley worked at MITRE, who worked with them, and we were making some dents, but it was like one step forward, two steps back, depending on who is upset. And I kind of joked and said, we need a Geneva Convention. Like, we just need to no one's going to listen until they feel heard. So I pitched some ideas to Mike about, can we ask people one more time, fly out to DC. We will make sure that you're heard completely and that your wants, needs, and fears are clear. I want you to do the same thing to the FDA. And the morning's going to be purging and hearing each other. And then we're going to say, no more admiring the problem. Let's actually do something about it. It was really stupid and really high risk, but he was encouraging in the approach. And when we got there, he couldn't even get in the freaking building because he had a Canadian passport and you needed to be a US citizen. And he flew all the way there on his own dime, just like all the other hackers did. And no one thought it was going to go well, and it almost didn't. And there was a big fight between one researcher and one guy that pissed her off. And the day wasn't going perfect, but eventually we used some charm offensive and we got people laughing and everyone got to say their piece and the FDA was listening and we listened to them and everything was perfect. We had primed the room to do the harder part in the afternoon. And then some guy from FDA who wasn't invited showed up and he looked pissed off and he didn't introduce himself. And we were trying to do the agenda and I'm getting pressure from our hacker friends and it just feels like it's going to go off the rails. And they're like, this is more of the same. We're not going to get anything done. And I looked at Mike and he looked at me and we never said a word. And it was probably at most 3 seconds that I was just looking at him. Not a word spoken, but we had like a half an hour conversation with no words. At least I felt like we did, but I had no clue if I was actually hearing what he was trying to say to me, but it was almost like telepathic conversation about shit. What do we do about this? Because it was about to all fall apart. And I took a breath and I asked the guy, I'm like, are we upsetting you? And he said, yes, you are. And then he started unleashing as to why he was upset. And I took a pause and I could see the hackers getting mad, like this is a disaster. And I don't remember what we did, but I just stopped the plan, looked at Mike again, he just smiled. And I went to the whiteboard and we did some stuff and we somehow corralled it and we somehow got through it. And we went to dinner that night. And I'm like, did we have the conversation I thought we had? And he broke it down almost line by line, what was going through my head. And I'm like, this guy is scary, brilliant. And I've never seen such interpersonal skills, but it's not so much what happened and what I experienced and how surreal it was. It's that it fucking worked, because a couple weeks later, I think the key thing was he was so angry. He's like, what's wrong with you hackers? Why would you hack perfectly good medical devices? You're scaring people. We're trying to save lives. And all you're doing is doing this. Why do you even do this? And when I realized he was missing is, what's the motive? Why do we do it? And by taking a step backward, we made a huge leap forward. And about 3 weeks later or so, Suzanne called me and said, we're going to do it. We're going to do the first recall, safety communication. I said, did somebody get hurt? Because the prior standard was you needed proof of harm. People had to get hurt and you had to directly link it to a hack or a defect. And she's like, yeah, we have an unmitigated pathway to harm on a bedside infusion pump. Why do we have to wait for people to get hurt? So they hurt us. But there was a version of that day that was an utter catastrophe where everyone's yelling and saying, see, it's not going to work. And like Mike's encouragement to try it, Mike's encouragement to keep the hackers calm, Mike's encouragement at that pretty key moment to break script. It's just, there's a magical power to him. And I want to see more of us doing that. So when I talk about that outsized hole and that outsized gap and that outsized loss, whenever I lose someone, the hope I try to hold on to is maybe if something's missing, we got to put it there. Maybe without Mike, what can you do to carry on and learn how to build that empathy muscle and be an encourager and be an ally and be a mentor and try to help people in their next career and be present when they need someone to be present. We're not going to be nearly as good as him. So it's going to take more of us to try. But the best way to honor Mike is to try to be more like that. The one, I don't know if she wants the opportunity, but I'm trying to pull in one of his other family members here, but there was also a moment where I tried to get him to get a job for a friend of mine, Audie, who's here in New England with us. And her job sucked at a hospital, and it's her story to tell if she wants to, but I sent it.
If she wants to.
You want to? No, she's shaking her head.
Okay.
But she was going to go to the Bay Area and maybe look at a job. And I sent her to Sutter and I sent her to Mike, and she liked Mike on Twitter. Mike liked her on Twitter because all her medical horror stories, but from working in a bad hospital. But while it didn't work out, like, he is instantly present and instantly helpful and really bonded and became her friend. And then so later on, when life changed a lot and we got to surprise him, and I got to tell him about I let my broken heart let someone into it again. And I was falling in love with a friend of mine who's starting to feel differently. When we revealed it to him, he just started to cry, like genuine love, and because he loves her and he loves me. And the idea of us being together was really special. And we got to enjoy, being couples with Mike and Lana. In fact, now that Audie finally bought a dress and we were finally picking a date for this summer, like, we had just written down the handful of hacker family that we were going to have come. And, the last conversation I had with Mike, I meant to bring that up, but he was helping me again. I got such bad PTSD from working at CISA and doing the pandemic stuff. And he just spent the hour and a half he had while he was making dinner and making pan-seared chicken thighs. And he was present and encouraging and told me I'm going to be okay, and was smiling and laughing, not at me, but for me. And just, it was amazing. But it ended with, all right, I got to go. My chicken's going to get cold. And it was ultimately the night before his last night, I guess. And the last text I had with him, as I said, I'm going to read that part. I have permission to read that part. It was, in some ways, it really upset me. It's not how I wanted to have my last chat with him. But I said, how were your pan-seared chicken thighs? And he said, they were fantastic. I make really damn good chicken. And with a big smiley face. And it's just I think that man put so much passion and joy in everything, whether it was a friendship, a job, a dinner.
He had such a great, his sense of humor too. Like I remember when I was going through the interview, and it was different, right? Because he's a friend. I was like, Mike, when I was at Splunk, I cared considerably less who was looking at my Twitter feed, which if anybody who's ever seen it, it's not exactly squeaky clean. And Splunk had issues with that, but fuck them. And I was like, Mike, listen, I'm coming to work for you. You're my friend. I respect you. Let me know. Do you want me to do anything to clean it up? He's like, fuck no. He was like, I see you talk to Rowdy and Audrey and all of these people, and you have your nipples out all the time. I was like, all right, well, you have to get that graphic. He goes, you're the one getting graphic. He goes, I wouldn't fucking trade that for the world. That's one of my favorite memories about my interview process with him. He's like, no, I'm not going to make you do that.
Do I get the light bulb question, by the way? I don't know.
Yeah, that son of a bitch. Okay, listen. Fucking raise your hand if Mike ever asked you the light bulb question. Yeah. Okay, you didn't? All right, Josh, I'll tell you that offline. I would hate to ruin it for other people because I swear to God I'm carrying it through for the rest of my career. However, Mike, wherever you are, fucker. Oh my, but he was so encouraging. And I'm sitting here and he's like looking at me while I'm doing it because we're on a Zoom together. And it was just one of our casual conversations. It was one of these thought things. You got to think it out and like these thought problems or whatever. And clearly I'm not one of the thought leaders. I'm sitting here like throwing shit and getting not at him. I'm getting angry at the question. Anyway, I don't want to ruin it for everybody. Son of a bitch. We have some, yeah, god damn it, man. And I think Casey, is that you? I can't hear you.
It's the mic thing. Yes, it's me.
Ah, there you are. And now you're all blank. Oh, there. Okay, there we go.
Ostensibly, if the computers work, yeah.
How are you, mate? You have a story about Mike?
Yeah, just a brief one. Mike and I, we just found a way to be in the same space at the same time quite a bit. So we didn't necessarily like get together and like plot and plan and have opportunities to work on different things, but we just kind of always ended up in the same places. Like the first time he and I met was around I heard Josh talking about some of the stuff with FDA. It was around the inclusion of vulnerable disclosure into the post-market cybersecurity guidance with FDA. And he got wind of the fact that we were trying to help, the FDA understand how that worked. What was really cool was I think he just approached the fact that we're involved in that, not with this sort of default assumption that like, yeah, you're trying to build a company, you've got this kind of conflict in that. He actually just assumed that it was for the good of the initiative itself, which it was, but like he didn't need to do that. And that was my initial impression of the guy. Like he approaches folk with this idea that like there's inherent value in that other human. And like, I'm just going to go try to find that first. Like there might be a whole bunch of other stuff, other data, other, potential things to look out, whatever, doesn't matter. If you're in front of me, you're a human that I'm having a conversation with, then I'm just going to go after the gold. And that's going to be my first port of call. So that was my initial impression of him, which was really cool. That's a character trait that I don't think that many people have. And when you see it, it stands out, right? I think that's one of the reasons why, the reaction to him passing has been so strongly responded to by such a big group of people, because I think he touched a lot of people in that kind of way. They had that experience on the receiving side, right? The other part was, quickly figured out he's Canadian, I'm Australian. Like we've got this shared experience of coming from a Commonwealth country and trying to learn how to speak American, and all the weirdness that goes with that.
We're not easy. I don't even like speaking American.
There's an art to it. There's definitely some stuff that you it's not intuitive coming in from the outside, because we watch American TV, like there's a lot of things that look the same, but when you get here, you realize that there's a lot of stuff that's actually pretty important. That's not quite the same. It's a bit different. And he actually was one of the first conversations I had with someone where I recognized that was a thing that, you know, I needed to figure out personally, but also that I could actually help other people with from an experiential standpoint. You know, I've since gone off and used really the product of that conversation, talking to a lot of different, you know, entrepreneurs and just different folk trying to operate in the US, out of Australia, out of Canada, out of the UK. That kind of started with him. So it was that, you know, it's that same theme that I've heard come up a bunch of times, like that deep empathy for people, and the fact that, like, we're all trying to get good things done. There's this, you know, this good thing and this gold that's trying to come out. There's all sorts of stuff that's going to get in the way of that. So how do we clear a path? You know, I love that about the guy. And, you know, it started to got into a position, again, kind of tactically, just turning up at, you know, dinners and events, and, oh, you're here, cool, rocking, let's catch up again. As he was getting into the CEO and startup thing, you know, I'd been doing that for a few more years than he had at that point. So he had questions to ask me, and it was wonderful. Like, there was this kind of transaction and this exchange of value that I just think kind of summed up Mike's view of how humans should operate. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all got something to share. We've all got something that's good. There's all of these other things that might, you know, interfere with that. But if you focus on the good parts and how you can work to make each other better, and pursue potential together, then good things happen as a byproduct of that. So yeah, that's my story.
I have another message, from Lana. Again, she was watching. She's watching all of this. Mike saw the potential in everyone, but he still accepted the person as they were. And I think also, coming back to my abject shit posting, many leaders try to push or break people to be their full potential, but not Mike. He would nurture, encourage, and ultimately accept that you would get there when you were ready. He would influence slightly and provide opportunities to never push. He did, in fact, make great chicken. Josh, I have confirmation of the great chicken. So we have multiple sources, as we all know in CTI. We need more sources for good intel. He also asked, he did ask Lana the light bulb question, which I think, Lana, I would have never dated him, quite honestly, if that was the peak to entry. I don't know. You're a saint. And she was like, I fucking aced it, obviously. Yeah.
Sounds like her.
Of course, Lana's a firecracker. She's the best. So we've there's a few more messages in here that I wanted to read, and if anybody else has other stories, I mean, obviously we can stay and tell them. Alan Neal and I tweeted this a while ago, but I met Mike over Google Meet about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and it's a shame I never got to meet face to face. The backstory being that I was trying to get out of Dodge from my current company at the time, and who did he have an interview with after meeting? Wait, at the time, Alan, your typing sucks. And who did he have an interview with after meeting I had? None other than the CISO of the company that I was at for his podcast. What a coincidence. Let's see. There's Casey. Good, Casey's here. My buddy in the chat says that my Twitter feed is peak professional. As a matter of fact, it's not. I also told Mike this. I was like, Mike, just, are you sure? Because I have been reliably, that I know of, removed from 3 different corporate SOC Twitter feeds. You know how in the SOC, the fish bowls, they have like Twitter feeds up sometimes, like stuff. Well, I got in on some of them. My own company once. I worked at Gigamon. And later on, the CISO told me, he was like, yeah, well, somebody else told me first, but they actually had to forcibly remove me from the feed because I don't know what I had tweeted that particular day. But Mike's like, no, that's fine. Of course. Welcome to Scope. Fallon says he wanted you as you were, not filtered through some cookie cutter, even with your flaws. He didn't care if you had issues as long as you made progress to improve. He was also very big on praise in public and punish in private, or not punish. I don't think punish was the word, but praise in public. To the point where I would show him something like, Daddy, look what I did. I did a good spreadsheet for you. And he would say nothing. And I was like, is the absence of negativity positivity? Mike, I don't understand. And he was like, no, I fucking hated it. But here's why I hated it. But I wasn't going to tell you on the call. And I was like, but I asked you to. He was like, no, I don't believe in that. I said, all right.
That's
And,
awesome.
yeah, because I thought that,
It's really cool.
and actually that completely negates what I just said about the absence of negativity being positivity, because there was nothing. And I was like, oh, maybe that's positive. And I messaged him. I was like, so you like the spreadsheet? He was like, fuck no. He was like, it's garbage. He was like, but here's how you can fix it. Fucking guy. Counsel in private, perhaps, is what Fallon had said. All right. So that's, I mean, if anybody has other stories, we've done this is an hour. I know it's heavy shit to talk about. I hope that, I want Alana to message me one more time. Does anybody have any other stories that they wanted to share as we're on?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that random lol on the Twitch was in response to Josh talking about, not being able to get into a skiff because of the Canadian passport. That kind of tied into the story that I was wanting to tell. Kind of fun there, but it wasn't. Yeah, it's an appropriate, in context to elucidate that lol, so it's not just sitting out there on its own.
We got him in. We had to use a different room,
of course.
but we got him in.
You just go to a coffee shop and do it there instead, right?
That reminds me. So I guess as a way to kind of close it up, Mike's funeral is this Friday up in Kingston, Ontario. I'm an ignorant American, so I'm pretty sure it's Kingston, Ontario. All of the details you can find on my Twitter. You can find it on Lana's Twitter and her Instagram. I will be driving up. I have to look at, do they even let Americans in? I don't know. I hope so. I know for a while they weren't. Like, even pre-pandemic, I wouldn't blame them for not letting us in.
It's all clear now. It's all clear. Anyone can go.
Oh, is it? Like, do you need to show them anything? Like,
you just need to upload your proof of vaccination to, I forgot what it's called. Like Lana and I were looking into this earlier, like 3 days before.
Okay.
So just go to the Canada travel site.
Yeah. So that is this Thursday or Friday. I'll be fine. I'll be driving up for that. It is open. If you knew him and you're of the way of going, it is open. Everybody is welcome to come. I know this was not easy for a lot of people, but I think at least we remembered the really great stuff about Mike. Again, I'm going to have pages up of all of his stuff. You cannot destroy a force like Mike. The person might not be here anymore, but if for no other reason, if we only took the people that were here today, 30 people in chat, 5 people here on the Zoom, that is the universes and universes of influence out there that Mike is a part of. So Mike is not, I don't believe much in an afterlife, but we'll get to that later. I do believe in energy staying around, and Mike did that. I am going to put I'm going to put a closing screen on here. What's that?
Sorry, before you do that, Danny, I'm on my chat. Lana had sent me some final thoughts that she wanted me to share. With
absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I just put, just a true marketing fashion, I just put the logistics of her Instagram and her Twitter in the Twitch chat. First of all, she's so thankful to everyone who joined, shared stories in the chat, shared on video, has been sharing on Twitter, has been reaching out to her. Obviously, she's very overwhelmed. The family's very overwhelmed, and keep reaching out to her though. Send her love. It's a bit too soon for her to talk right now, but she will soon, and she promises that she will reply as soon as she can. I think getting through the next week, of course, will be huge. And as she also mentioned on her Twitter and her Insta, that she and her friends, our friends, will be throwing a celebration of life, which will be open. So more info on that to come. But the biggest takeaway that I think she wanted me to share is that all of this shows her, and she knew this, but obviously needs this right now, how impactful Mike was in the world. And that's all he ever wanted. And he always wanted to change the world. He didn't want to just change security. He, of course, wanted to save people, but he wanted to change the world. But just in her words here, this proved he did with each and every person he touched to provide these beautiful, beautiful stories. He lives on through these, never stop these, send these stories to me day and night. And that's from Lana. So very special human. So now if you weren't sure how to reach her, you can just it'll take her a little bit of time to get back to you, but she will.
Well, thank you. it's not. We're not done talking about him by a long shot. And if somebody only really truly died, it's a saying, it's a cliche or whatever, but I believe it. It's that the person only actually dies when people stop talking. The last time that a name is said is when they die, and I don't think his name's ever going to stop being said. And there's really not a whole lot more to say, but I mean, obviously follow, Casey's fucking amazing, Bill's amazing, Josh, Jennifer, all of you. Thank you for joining. I have one more screen to put up, and it's an important one. And then after that, we'll go our separate ways, but thank you, everybody.
Satellite in my eyes, like a diamond in the sky. How I wonder, satellites strong from